Now we go to the third architect. Today, someone a little bit less known, perhaps, a Frenchman. A Frenchman who built some important buildings, and some of them quite interesting. I should have double checked. I should have checked how to pronounce his name. I don't know if I can find a way to find out. Should it be Paul Chemetov or Paul Chemetov? Anyway, born on the same year like Fumihiko Maki, 1928. So both of them 93 years old today. But on Wikipedia, strangely, Paul is shown as being born on the 12th of October, and then on the very same page of the British English Wikipedia, it says born on September 6th, and the site where I take these birthdays from is shown also on September 6th. So I chose to talk about him today. Sometimes there are, contradictory informations on data on the web. So he was born in Paris on September 6th. This I took from the very same Wikipedia, which says that he was born on October 12th. Can you believe it? Well, it's not a crime, and it's certainly not the biggest crime. As a student, he belonged to the Union of Communist Students. Interesting. He graduated from the National School of Fine Arts in 1959. Chemetov, I somehow feel tempted to read it like this, but maybe the French pronounce it Chemetov. Taught at the École des Ponts Paris Tech until 1989, at which time he switched to the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne, the famous architecture school in Lausanne. In 1961, he joined the AAU. I don't know what this is. He has designed several buildings with Borja Huidobro, who was born in Chile, and they built some interesting buildings together since 1983. He has received several awards and honors, including the Grand Prix National d'Architecture in 1980, Officer of the Legion of Honor, Officer of the Order des Arts or Order des Arts et des Lettres, and Officer of the Ordre National du Mérite. His son is also an architect, but I didn't include that part of the text. And here is the man, architect et urbaniste. In my opinion, any good architect is also an urbanist, and hopefully even a good urbanist is also an architect. And usually they are. I mean, usually an urbanist is also trained as an architect. Now there is a sofa or a bed by Miss van der Rohe. Anyway, so this is the man. Happy birthday to you, sir. 93 years old, just like Fumihiko Maki. Cité des Anciens, La Courneuve, 1963-1966. A nice building, you know. I always like this mixture between brick and concrete, you know, with a so-called brutalist touch, but sensitively done, and wood adds to the mixture in a warm way, I would say. Yes, it's a complex of apartments called the Cité des Anciens, or the, you know. Anyway, I think it's a good building. And again, you bring together brick and wood, and also with touches of concrete. You have a chance that you design something, or you create something which is not very boring. Now, I am not sure what this is. It is the back of the building, which is very different from the other side. And, almost puzzlingly so, but interesting also. And it shows skill. So very different from Fumihikomaki, for example. So I guess the access to the apartments is made through this, corridor, which is expressed towards the outside in this way. A nice idea, and I think it works. Seen from here, without knowing the other side of the building, you would say this could be, I don't know, a cultural building, an industrial building, a public building. Well, it's not. But this circulation is public because it gives access to each individual unit, which also has a nice triangular space in front of it, which I think is nice to have this intermediate space between the corridors, so you don't enter the house abruptly from the corridor. You have this, intermediate space. Théâtre de plein air in Hammamet in 1964, I guess it was built in 1964, is an interesting, again, this architect who is less known in some parts of the world. In France, I imagine he is, but he's not one of the best known architects. And yet, I think his work is good. So it's a theater in open air. Maybe he also handled here some restoration of an existing structure. It's possible, but it's done well. And, without being afraid to unfinish or let matter express itself without so-called finishes. You have the stone, you see how the stone is placed above another stone, and then you have concrete here for this tower, and all in all, it's some kind of a mixture between the old and the new, which works. It's basic, no? But I like its, primitivism, if I am to call it so. And interestingly, technological devices sit well in a context which is, rather so-called primitive, although it's done with concrete, but exposed concrete. Now, Maison Chaly in Clamart, 1967. I like the interior, has something of Maison Jaoul by Le Corbusier, and also, some works that we have seen in India. There is a French architecture built when was this built? 1967. Yes, in the 60s, very interesting architecture, which I think is very relevant for our time. It's modern, but it's not an aggressive, indolent modernity. It's a hybrid modernity. And I think there are architects in France, and not just in France, in Germany and other European countries. I think that architecture from a little bit later than mid-century, in the 60s, in Europe in particular, but in the States as well, and maybe some other parts of the world, but in Europe, I'm talking about Europe, that deserves some attention, in my opinion. And look, it's an architecture that is not alarmingly, rationalistic, but it has this conjunction of various materials. The geometry is simple, it's humane, but also, modern in a soft and warm way. I mean, look at this stair. It's basic, but it's solid. It's massive. You can trust this stair. It's not, playing games with your foot or with your stability. For Chemetov, Maison La Bombe, La Bombe, 1967, 2004. That's a long time, almost 40 years. I guess he built in various phases, but there are interesting things here too. Look at this. You have if you didn't have the sloping roof here, this could have been almost some kind of a Tadawando building. But then you have the other two buildings. So I like this complexity and contradiction, if you want, and also this hybridity. It's not an architecture that claims purity, especially false purity, and it's very romantic because the stone, and again touches of brick, the arches. I like it. I would gladly live in such a place. You could feel that you belong to the 20th century or 21st, but also to the Middle Ages, maybe. So I guess it was an intervention in time, perhaps also on an existing structure. Now, if you cover these walls with plaster, I think you would ruin the whole feeling of the house. I like these so-called imperfections. The workings of time, of the elements, of the passage of time, water, snow, whatever. The rain, the stair. You belong to Kronos, the god of the circular time, not to Kronos, sorry, to Kairos. It's something about the conjunction between various times on the spiral of time. Maison Steckermann, Avelin, 1972, 2001. Now this one is different because here probably he didn't have to incorporate any existing older part. But it's still an interesting building, I mean, really, is that famous house in Bordeaux by Rem Koolhaas better than this building? I don't think so. Anyway, even here, there is this duality between this part of the building and this one, and there is a tension between them. Not an alarming tension, but they are different. They are different. And I like the structure, these diagonals add something to the building. And they are purely functional, I mean, structural. Caisse primaire d'assurance maladie, Vigneux-sur-Seine, 1972. Again, this architecture from Europe, from France, now we talk about France, but other countries, from the 60s and early 70s, because towards the end, already the vicious postmodernism was knocking at the door. But in the 60s and early 70s, it was an architecture that it was modern, it was not aggressively modern, and very innovative, I would say. Of course, we cannot turn the clock back. We cannot go back to that time, but maybe we can find some inspiration there. Collège d'enseignement secondaire, Romainville, 1973. A college, but not just concrete, but also color and circles. And the interior is alive. It's kind of like in Hermann Herzberger, that encourages encounters, chance encounters or otherwise, but encounters. These interstitial spaces are important for communication. And I think they should always be present, not just in large buildings, but also in smaller buildings, if possible. Not afraid of color, as you can see. even so-called unconventional color. Patinoire, a nice ring, Saint Will in 1975, 1979. This is also an interesting building. I mean, look at this, you know, it's inviting and a little bit provocative, and you don't quite know what is there. But I think I like this building, you know, it's open, you know, and it is fragile enough to be, you know, not to be morose. A good architect, in other words, Monsieur Paul Chemetov or Chemetov. Opération Arago, Saint-Ouen, 1975, housing with a clear social agenda and with prefabrication. And there is a vivacity here that I admire. You know, it's not, I mean, prefabrication perhaps should be contemplated again. And maybe it's not a building for the rich, but a building for, you know, lesser people, so to speak. Although the language is problematic because those who are underprivileged are not at all lesser people. And you see from the plan that, you know, it is a hybrid of functions. And it is exactly this hybridity that I think is very relevant to our time and quality of this project. Logement HLM, Sol-les-Chartreux, 1976, other housing. This one also interesting, you know. Yes, you know, they were experimenting a lot at that time, you know, and really, I mean, you can take this complex of, you know, apartments or houses and go with them to Japan and they will see just well. In fact, next door to a building by Tadao Ando. Or Fumihiko Maki if you want. And again, we see the same interstitial space. Well, here we don't see too much color, we don't see people, but try to imagine people here, well, in the context of non-pandemic present, a bench, people talking, you know, neighbors, this interstitial space between several housing units is very, very human and very beneficial. Opération Robespierre, Saint-Ouen, again, 1978, another housing complex. The French built a lot of these, you know, they did have a need for such housing complexes, and they also had an interest in social architecture, as you can see here, and it's fine. You know, yes, maybe this building is, I don't know, it was not finished or something, but even here you have a transition, and I don't know if this was designed by him. I imagined it was, but next to it is this building, which is lower scale, and it has variety. It's a dynamic, you know, architectural context created perhaps not with great ambitions, you know, architecturally or with a great budget. Immeuble anti-bruit. So this is a building against noise in Vienna. I imagine it's Vienna, Austria, 1977, 1979. Strangely, I thought I know Vienna well enough, but I never knew that Paul Chemetov or Chemetov built there. It is indeed anti-bruit. I mean, you know, turning the back completely, with the exception of these little windows there. There are probably bathrooms there or something, you know. Otherwise, it's a very, very misanthropic wall. I mean, misanthropic towards the noise. if I can say so. Otherwise, the building is interesting, but yes, in a very difficult, plot of land. I mean, it's not just the railway, but also the highway. So the island of housing is squeezed between two great sources of noise. A difficult, indeed, context. But these units, they open towards this courtyard where there is even a tree and, a kind of amphitheater, configuration, and the fountain there, maybe an old fountain. Anyway, équipement public de Hall, Paris, 1979, 1985. Now, even here we see skill, sculptural skill, handling the architectural elements in a vivacious way. Again, a mixture of functions. We had a swimming pool there. We have an amphitheater, a theater. We have a street, an inner street with probably shops and, moderately dramatic roofing system. Operation Pasteur. Interesting, the names of all these buildings. He built a lot. They built a lot. This also is interesting. I really like it. I really think we need such housing complexes. Experimental, prefabricated, expressing social concerns. Here again, the access into the apartments is from an exterior corridor. And where encounters between neighbors happen, if indeed the pandemic goes away. I like the built work more than the drawing, but even the drawing shows multiplicity in unity. But I like the way the building looks like, in real life, so to speak, built. Atelier, Paris, I think it's their own atelier. His and his partner, meaning their studio from 1986, 1995. It took them a while to build it, but it's not bad. It's interesting. It's cubical, but you don't perceive it as a cube because of the materials they employed. Not bad. Steel drafting boards. Of course, these pictures were taken before the arrival of Its Majesty the computer. I look at the structure of the floors, of the ceiling. It's good. Yes, there is glass, but a lot of glass, but somehow the building emanates an aesthetics that is not, annoyingly a glass aesthetics. Maison SZ in this place, which I hesitate to pronounce. Let me see if I can try. Sauceuse Mar on Co, 1997. A very different kind of building. I am as surprised as you probably are after the building we saw, but here, just like in that building that I comment on negatively by Peter Zumthor, it was an existing building, and then they added another building, with which they didn't try to compete. To situate themselves, antagonistically vis-a-vis this building. So this is, an attempt to extend the existing building to a structure that was mimicking somehow the existing and yet different. different materials. The windows, you know, they are not very different from what we see here, maybe a little bit larger. I almost feel tempted to say that what they did here is better than what Peter Zumthor did in that house in the Switzerland, which bothers me a lot with its shelves for snow, as I call them, which is manner is totally unasked for or useless. Here, you know, Chemetov and his partner or Chemetov, they don't play games as Peter Zumthor did. And they did a good job, I think. These two units together form a, you know, a building with two sides, you know, alas, two souls are dwelling in my heart. Now, this is the headquarters of the Communist Party in Paris. We learned that he was at the beginning, you know, associated with communism, and he probably remained. And this building was built by Oscar Niemeyer, who himself apparently was a communist, well-to-do communist in Brazil. This is the building by Oscar Niemeyer. I don't know exactly what Paul did here, but there are interesting things happening here, no doubt. But I don't know, do they belong to Niemeyer, as they probably do, or he was just the architect on site in Paris, working for and with Oscar Niemeyer. But it's an interesting building, nevertheless, built by an interesting architect, Oscar Niemeyer and Paul Chemetov. He contributed to the coming into being of this building. A touch of, you know, extraterrestrial architecture here, where unidentified flying objects. It's the you know, the gathering room, the auditorium, the conference room within inside the building by Niemeyer, and it has an interesting skin, so to speak, the way it is treated, the, you know, the surface of the carcass of this large room. Not bad. Oscar Niemeyer and Paul Chemetov. Building in New Delhi, 1985. This one also, I think, adapted to the local culture and yet expressing an accommodating modernity, as I would put it. With a touch of rationalism here, it's true. New Delhi. Governmental building. Now, Musée National d'Histoire Naturelle. I don't know why it's written, but anyway, it's both in French and not French. Musée National is musée. Anyway, Paris. It saddens me a little bit the presence of these stuffed animals inside the human structure. That's why I think we need badly taming the human, taming man, because we went too far, you know, controlling everything, plant and animal alike, putting everything into a you know, in essence, a concentration camp, you know, for the dead or for the living, you know, if it is a zoo. We have to control everything, of course. The humans have to control everything. Now, it's true, I wouldn't like to meet these rhinoceros or, you know, these animals on the street. It's true. But let them be free in nature, and let's not stuff them, please. You know, it's something horrid about stuffing animals. You know, birds also. Is this assault on life that the human beings do that bother me a lot? Hotel Industriel, Pantin. I really think their architecture is not bad at all. Maybe with some predictable parts like here, but for an industrial building, it's not bad at all. It reminds me a little bit of that Nemesis complex of apartments by apartment buildings by two apartment buildings by Jean Nouvel. Ministère des Finances. This is in Bercy in Paris, and it's a very large building. You can imagine, you know, the Ministry of Finances. So we are dealing here with those who handle the money in the capital of France. It's not a little matter. And he worked with this man. This was his partner for many years, and most buildings that we saw were done together with him. This architect born in Chile. And this is the building. It's a massive. It's a, you know, it's an interesting building because it is built perpendicularly on the river Seine, and it is monumental. It's large. I'm glad to see that a governmental building assumed, you know, a courageous architectural statement. So this is in the Bercy region of Paris. This is the building. I don't know about everything else here, but this is the building. This is a sports arena. I don't know who built it, but this is the building by the architect we are paying homage to today. I guess it's more than just this building. It's also this and perhaps also this. Anyway, quite a large complex of buildings in Paris or Paris. I really have to learn how to pronounce correctly his name. Chemetov. Anyway, La Seine, the great river with its bridges, and then Ministry of Finances by the architect who is 93 years old today. What an age. Of course, they still have to live a little bit longer, both him and Fumihiko Maki, to reach the age until which Oscar Niemeyer lived. I think he died at 101 or 102. Un architecte dans le siècle, Paul Chemetov. Let me see, it should be something like Chemetov. I don't know why I feel like reading him in my own language, Chemetov. Anyway, here he is, engagé, ancien communiste, engagé, ancien communiste. On lui doit notamment le ministère de l'économie et des finances, the work we just saw. This picture was taken last year when he was 92 years old. Plaide pour une éthique de la construction. He advocates an ethics, the ethics of construction. But I like this, engagé, ancien communiste. This is also a good building. Well, again, I don't know who designed it. I don't think it was by them, no. So next time you will be in Paris, please don't forget to take a look at this Ministry of Finances by And now Caserne Masséna, Paris, 2004, 2010. I think it's another apartment building and almost a commentary on l'unité d'habitation by Le Corbusier, and yet very different from l'unité d'habitation. Interesting work. And they probably did also this kindergarten, or maybe these are also housing units. I don't know, but all in all, I think it's a good architecture. Mediathèque L'Apostrophe in Chartres. Chartres, not bad, near the cathedral, 2004, 2007. We can see the incredible building of the Middle Ages with its two towers, one dedicated to the moon, one dedicated to the sun, but it might be the other way around. This is the old tower. I think this is the moon tower, and this is the sun tower, built a little bit later. This is the western facade of the beautiful Chartres Cathedral. For some, the most beautiful cathedral ever built until now. For some, perhaps this is a small building, La Mediathèque in Chartres, where you can see the cathedral sitting there at the table. If you are interested to take a look through the window, and again a hybrid function, Mediathèque with various things, but there are interesting things happening here. So these architects were capable to offer surprises, which you wouldn't expect looking at the building. Of course, they only built this, but looking at this, you wouldn't expect to view something like this. Maybe not even, well, like this, I guess, too. This is probably in the older building. Anyway, and Chartres. Mazet, La Bombe, little house. Again, I like very much the way they combined a steel structure with stone, with some kind of a mixture between, technology and rustic remnants of previous buildings or existing buildings. They complement each other, and I think this is a good thing. And I like stone. We don't use stone enough, but I think you can trust stone. It's difficult not to. Unless, of course, one big rock falls on your feet, then it's a different story. Le Coursive, the Pantin, a large apartment building, newer work somehow, 5 years ago it was finalized, the project. Built. Is this inferior to the housing blocks of flats built by Aldo Rossi in Berlin? I don't think so. But he is less known than Aldo Rossi. Residence Senior in Amiens, where there is another incredible cathedral, also just like Chartres, with a beautiful labyrinth on its floor at the entrance. I think this was a project, or was it built, rendering? Anyway, I think they were quite good, and they are good at handling, housing requirements in a playful and yet sober way. La Fabrique réinventée Paris, to reinvent Paris, 2015. Even this building, I don't think it was built. But I hope it was, because it is an apartment building that is interesting. And what else can I say? Paul Chemetov or Chemetov, Logement Saint-Roch, again, housing units, blocks of flats with a ludic tram car. They didn't design the tram car, and that's it. So happy birthday to him, and happy birthday to Sebastiano Serlio, and happy birthday to Fumihiko Maki.